Hello, everyone. Kind of just making a quick video here. Definitely not going to be able to touch on everything that was introduced and definitely going to forget some stuff, but just wanted to kind of detail my experience coming from a more casual perspective. This isn't a game that I play full time or it's not my job to play the game, so I don't have a whole lot of time invested in it. But um, I just wanted to make a quick video talking about the pros and cons of the new Last Epoch season. So this is a game that I started playing last year whenever Tombs of the Erased came out, and I had kind of tried it before. There was a lot of things about the game that kind of threw me off and made it hard for me to enjoy initially. Um, I would say now a lot of those things have been either fully rectified or at least improved upon enough to where that's not really a factor for me anymore. But I was kind of back in a similar boat where I was kind of sleeping on this game again, and I was really heavily into Path of Exile this past league, and I was really into it. So I saw that that Last Epoch was coming out with a new update. I kind of dipped my toes in the water a little bit the day of and wasn't really feeling it, but the Path of Exile burnout for me had kind of set in because I've kind of been playing it nonstop since the new season launch. But whenever I decided to come back to Last Epoch, I was thoroughly surprised by the stuff they've done in this update. So kind of just wanted to go over some of the pros and cons that I think are the most noticeable pros and cons that I was able to think of on the spot that I've noticed in this season. So, and this is kind of just based off of my experience with the game. It's based off of my comparisons to the other games in the genre that I play. But I think that it's come a long way, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So we'll go ahead and kick things off. I kind of tried to um, do my talking points in the ways that these presented themselves for me whenever I was jumping back in. So I want to say that this time around the campaign actually felt a lot more smooth. I've had issues with it in the past, and I do think that some of the other improvements they've made to the game have kind of contributed to the improved experience that I had this time in the campaign, like the general UI, just general graphical changes that have been made. But it's really just based off of kind of how I felt when I was playing it. The campaign just felt better to me, just playing it, and I think a lot of that actually is probably just kind of stemming from the other general improvements they made. But it's something I noticed, figured I would put it in there. Crafting, this is obviously like a very huge thing for Last Epoch. Everybody has always praised the crafting system in Last Epoch, or Epic. I don't know which one it is. I don't know. I know that it's technically Epic, but I don't know what they say. I've heard people say different things, so I will probably be switching back and forth. Um, so the crafting has always been kind of like one of the drawing points of the game. People have often said that the crafting is one of the highlights of the game. It does it better than a lot of the other games in the genre. I have to agree with it. Honestly, I actually really enjoy the crafting, and it was kind of like one of the things that hooks me, or specifically about this game that like hooked me when I was playing it. It kind of just like opens up your mind to being creative. When you see that there's like an ease of access to the crafting system, and you can see in the loot filter what kind of things that you're going for. Like if you're going for, in this case, I'm doing a hammer throw build, which is kind of like you know not anything crazy. It doesn't take anything special to throw that together. It seems like a pretty popular build, but I was kind of drawn to it. I recently played a Hammered In and the new Diablo 2 update, and I kind of had a hankering to have that similar play style again. But luckily, that ended up just kind of being a powerful play style for me, or a powerful play style in general. But the crafting and just like the ease of access to it kind of lent me to getting hooked more into the game, because I can see, open prefixes and suffixes, you get your affix shards, and then you can just kind of like throw stuff on that you need in a JIP, you get your forging potential so that you can't just like infinitely upgrade an item. So I think the pacing of it and the scaling or the general balance of it is really nice. It's one of the biggest pros about the game, in my opinion. UI, I think that there's been some pretty considerable UI improvements. Apologize in advance. This is really janky how I have this set up. The notes, I was having an issue with like my notepad and just use the Steam overlay notes just because it was easier for me to figure out. I'm sure if someone comments, they'll be like, yeah, you can just do this, but whatever. So UI, honestly, I am trying to think of some specific examples, but I didn't even mean to do this right now. But this kind of leads a little bit more into some of the other talking points that I had, but the gameplay just feels more punchy. I know that they said that they were trying to improve the melee feel, or just like the reactivity of when you're hitting things, and just like getting some kind of sense of feedback from when you're actually like interacting with things. I think that's been a huge thing that I've noticed so far. I'm going to go ahead and jump out here because it's not even what I meant to do. What was the thing that I had noticed earlier? There was something specific I noticed. It was something about the Omen windows that I had noticed that kind of had an improved UI. I think there was the Quest UI. This thing had been improved. Like I said, this is a very like janky and last minute thing that I've just decided to do here. So I literally didn't prepare for anything, but anybody that's been playing, I feel like they've kind of paired at that same point that the UI does feel better. I'm gonna put this back here. So UI gameplay, I kind of touched on that a little bit. I touched on the build variety a little bit already, kind of with my just ease of access to delving into the kind of play style that I ended up getting into. And I've had that experience before with this game where it's easy to just try things out, and that's huge for me. I kind of like to play these games where I will delve into like the more I'll delve into the more meta, or what's the word I'm looking for? I guess streamlined experience, or like most efficient experience of playing the game. Like I'll get into that mode sometimes, like especially if I'm trying to like farm something specifically. You kind of just find yourself in that spot. But whenever I'm playing a game, especially like on League Start, I usually kind of go in with the idea that like I have a certain idea of how I want to play the game, or like a certain build archetype that I want to fit. And I think that this game does that really well. I think that it's easy to just kind of get into an idea that you have. It's easy to just, like, oh, I want to be, a warrior, but utilize minions or something like that. There's a play style for that. Like there's an archetype for it. There's easy ways to build into it. So I think that's huge for me. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the game. Another thing that's huge is quality of life. And it's one of the other things that people have always commented on this being a really strong point in the game. is just the general quality of life features. Loot filter, auto sorting, the ability to set up your stash tabs. I'm generally a player that doesn't interact typically with. Well, that's not going to work for this. I generally don't interact with this kind of stuff. This is this is just me like playing around with it. It's this right here is kind of like done a lot for me. And I'm sure that I'm doing something wrong. I could fine tune it more, whatever. But it was easy for me to just kind of jump in and start playing with it. And it's been something that I've been, a little scared of trying in the past, where I have felt like a little scared of going into like a loot filter out of, fear that I'm going to miss something, but ended up kind of being like a pretty easy thing for me to test and play around with. And so far it's worked out well. I kind of have it very like not super restrictive, but just kind of like giving me pointers about like certain things that are dropping. Like you can color coordinate it. It's really cool. Honestly, it's a very strong element of the game. And as somebody that does enjoy these games, stuff like that is very, it is very nice for me. So a couple of things where I could see where the game kind of needs improvement. I still think the endgame kind of needs to be improved. The end game is in a better spot than I would say it has been ever, and that's just through the sole reason of just there being more content in the game now. So I do think that that kind of plays the biggest part here, but I generally think that the flow of the end game still kind of feels weird. I will say that it has a better structure now, kind of with like the omen windows, and they introduced the Weaver tree last year, which was huge. But I still think that this is kind of like the area that they need to put more effort into, which I know that they're probably already on that page, and they have some stuff that they're cooking up. So just something, if I had to say that needed improvement, I would say that the end game still needs improvement. This is kind of maybe more of a controversial take on my part. I don't know if other people share this opinion, or it may just be due to my lack of experience or skill issue. The uniques and sets don't feel super transformative to me. They are for certain builds from what I've seen, at least in my build that I chose. I think this may have just been what I ended up going with. Like there's just a lot of inherent power in my build, and I never found like any uniques where I'm like, wow, this is really changing how things are working. I will say that this kind of also ties into the itemization a little bit, which is more of a pro for me. I have seen affixes and stuff for hammer throw specifically, where it kind of adds a little bit of an interesting element to how the skill functions. But I like when you get an item and it just completely changes how you play the game. I would like to see more of that. Like I said, there's probably tons of it that I'm missing, and in fact, I know there is. And I have played it previous seasons where there were more transformative uniques. This go around, it just didn't happen for me. Like I said, that's kind of because of the build I chose to play. There's probably some stuff I'm missing, but I think it kind of ties into like this thing that I look for in these games, where I get excited when something drops, and that doesn't typically happen for me whenever I see a unique or a set item drop. Would like to hear people's thoughts on that. So some of the last talking points I had here, movement and WASD specifically. I became a huge fan of the WASD movement in this genre whenever I switched over to it in Path of Exile 2. And I knew that the feature was here in Last Epoch, Last Epoch, however it's pronounced. It feels okay, like it feels okay. Like I'm using it right now, and I actually have continued using it, but I find myself switching back and forth between the click to move movement and WASD. I find myself not really fully being able to rely on WASD for general map traversal. Like it still doesn't feel super great. It feels better than click to move whenever I'm in boss encounter or just like interacting with packs, like this feels kind of nice. But if it's just like me moving throughout the map, like it just doesn't feel that great. Like the jerkiness of the turning motions kind of just don't feel that fluid to me. It could just be a personal preference. I know that it's technically a beta feature, so I know that they're looking to improvement. My feedback on this would just be that there's just it's lacking fluidity in my opinion. Still, like I said, it still is nice that it's an option, and I do still play with it. But I would like to have it be a little bit more fluid. Last con that I could think of is could just be personal preference kind of thing, but the visuals, while they've improved greatly, it was one of the biggest drawbacks for me initially. It was just kind of in comparison to Diablo 4 or Path of Exile 2. It was kind of paling in comparison to those, and I think it's catching up, at least just purely from a graphical standpoint. I still think that the game itself looks a little cartoonish for me. For my personal preference, it's not enough for me to not play the game and enjoy it, but there's just a little bit of a cartoony element to it that's kind of not really my cup of tea. I would like to see it a little bit more refined, a little bit maybe more realistic. I don't really know how it would fit into this landscape. It may not make sense for them to do that. Like I said, I'll continue playing regardless of if they continue on with this art style and direction. But kind of just like a personal preference thing, mostly for me, I think. I'd say final thoughts. The game has come a long way, I think, and it needs more improvements. And there's some other things that are kind of clouding the developers and the game itself. There's a lot of things around like the acquisition of the company recently, and all those things. But I'm not superly concerned with that. I'm more just concerned of when I play the game, am I having fun? Do I think it's going in a good direction? And I think it is, honestly. I think the game is going in a good direction. The game feels great to me. It could always do for improvement, just like everything else in life. But I think right now it's in a really great spot. I think if people have been not wanting to try it, maybe now is a good time to come back and try it. That would be my general final thought on it. I think that it has enough content to get some good play out of it, and I think I'll keep pushing this character. Maybe I'll try to push it to Ubers, do the new boss fight, and and I may refine my in-game take on it when I get a little bit more into it, because I've only done like the basic timeline stuff with it so far. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about it. I'm sure I've missed a ton of stuff. If you guys have any thoughts or suggestions, or I know that this video is not an exactly a qualitative masterpiece, but if you have any suggestions for video formatting in the future, or things that you'd like to see, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on the new season. If you like it, if you don't like it, if you disagree with my takes, all that good stuff. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope if you've been playing it, I hope you've been enjoying it. And if you're on the fence about it, maybe it's good time to come back. That's all I have. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.